In the blistering summer of 1877, on the scorched edge of Harrow Creek, Texas, a lone widow named Eleanor Price was driven into the desert with nothing but an old butcher knife, a cracked canteen, and the bitter weight of a town's silence. Betrayed by the very community she once fed with her labor, she knew too much about the secret trade in human lives and paid the price for it. 3 days later, half dead from thirst and heat, she stumbled upon a sight that forced her to choose: walk away and survive a little longer, or risk everything to cut 2 captured Comanche warriors free from cruel hunting nets. What happened next in the red dust and canyon shadows would bind 3 hunted souls together in a quiet act of defiance that changed their fates forever. This story ends in a way that has left millions speechless and moved to tears. Stay until the final moment to feel it for yourself. If Eleanor's silent courage against rejection and brutality speaks to you, hit subscribe now for more untold tales of the forgotten frontier. Like if you believe justice sometimes begins with one hidden cut in the dark. Share this video and tell us in the comments, from which dusty corner of the world or modern city are you watching today? Your voice matters here. The summer of 1877 burned the Texas frontier as a branding iron left too long in the fire. Harrow Creek sat on the edge of nowhere, a dusty cattle town where the law was measured in bullets and profit, not justice. Eleanor Price, a widow pushing past 30, had lived there most of her life on hard labor alone. She worked the slaughter yard with a butcher knife that never left her side, skinned and quartered beef from dawn to dusk, then helped her husband haul freight for the army, crates of ammunition, sacks of grain, and things neither of them ever spoke about openly. Her husband took a bullet in the back one moonless night. The shooter called it a mistake. No witnesses came forward. Eleanor knew why. Those crates sometimes carried more than supplies: heavy hunting nets, coils of rope thick enough to hold a man, and ledgers marking government bounties for every live Indian delivered to the reservation agents. She knew the names of the men who loaded them, the ones who pocketed the cash. When her husband died, the town decided the last loose tongue had to be silenced. They didn't shoot her. That would have raised questions. Instead, they cut off her water at the communal well, boarded up the shack she shared with her dead husband, and spread word that Eleanor Price was no longer welcome. The preacher quoted scripture about unclean women. The saloon keeper barred his doors. Even the women who once traded gossip over her fence turned their backs. By sunset, the message was clear: leave before sunrise, or don't leave at all. Eleanor packed what little she owned. The old butcher knife was still flecked with dried blood from the yard, a cracked canteen with barely enough water for 2 days, a worn blanket, and a pouch of jerky gone hard as leather. She walked out of Harrow Creek without looking back, boots kicking up red dust that clung to her skirt like an accusation. The first day, the sun hammered her without mercy. Heat rose in waves from the cracked earth. She followed a dry creek bed east, away from the trails the cattle drives used, knowing searchers, if any came, would ride those first. Thirst scratched her throat by noon. She rationed sips, letting the warm water sit on her tongue before swallowing. Night brought no relief, only a bone-deep chill that made her teeth chatter. She huddled under the blanket in the lee of a rock outcrop, listening to coyotes argue in the dark. Sleep came in fits, haunted by the smell of blood from the slaughter yard and the echo of a single gunshot. Second day blurred into the same. Walk, rest in scant shade. Walk again. Her lips split and bled. The canteen grew lighter with every mile. Blisters rose on her heels, burst, and bled into her socks. She kept moving because stopping meant dying. By the third day, the land turned meaner. Jagged limestone ridges, thorn scrub that tore at her clothes, ground baked so hard it rang under her boots like iron. The sun sat white and vicious overhead. Her shadow shrank to nothing at noon, then stretched long and mocking as afternoon dragged on. She crested a low rise above a dry sinkhole and stopped dead. A sound cut through the wind, rope creaking under strain, metal rings scraping stone. Familiar sounds from 100 head of cattle caught in snares. But this was no cattle trap. Below, in the shaded bowl of the sink, 2 Comanche warriors hung suspended in a layered web of heavy hunting nets. The ropes bit deep into their arms and chests, blood tracing dark lines down bare skin whenever they shifted. Their horses lay dead nearby, throats cut to keep them quiet. Fresh hoofprints circled the site, 5, maybe 6 riders, heading east for water before returning. The warrior's eyes found her across the distance. Cold. Alert. No pleading in them, only calculation. They had been hunted before. Eleanor's hand tightened on the butcher knife at her belt. Walk away, and she might live another few days on the last swallows in her canteen. Cut them down, and she'd paint a target on her own back, bigger than the one the town had already drawn. The wind carried the faint smell of blood and sweat. Dust devils danced at the edge of the sink. Time narrowed to the space between one heartbeat and the next. She made her choice. She descended the slope with the caution of a woman who knew one loose rock could end everything. Dust puffed under her boots as she circled wide, staying downwind, eyes fixed on the net's anchor points. The traps were professional work, layered ropes knotted in patterns meant to tighten with struggle, counterweights hidden under flat stones. She'd seen smaller versions used on wolves and mountain lions, but these were built for men. Blood had already soaked dark patches into the warrior's buckskin, and sweat carved clean trails through the grime on their faces. Eleanor crouched behind a cedar stump 20 yards out, knife in hand. The warriors watched her without moving their heads. One had a hawk feather braid hanging loose. The other bore fresh brands on his forearms, marks of a horse thief hunt gone wrong, seasons back. Neither man wasted energy on pleas. She waited cold. The riders would return before sundown, collect their prizes, and ride for the agency post where bounties waited. If she walked now, the canteen might last another day, maybe 2 if she found a seep. Cutting them free meant joining the hunted. No illusions about gratitude or alliance, just 3 targets instead of 2. But she'd spent years in the slaughter yard, watching animals bleed out slowly because someone cut the wrong rope first. She knew the sequence. Release the secondary lines to ease tension, then the main anchor. Do it wrong, and the whole web collapses too fast, breaking bones or strangling. The sun hammered the sink like a forge. Heat shimmered off the rocks. She wiped sweat from her eyes and moved. First warrior hung higher, so she started with the lower one, the one with the branded arms. She slipped under the net's edge, knife flashing in quick, precise cuts. Secondary ropes parted with soft pops. The warrior's weight shifted. He grunted once as circulation returned in his fire. When the main line gave, he dropped controlled, knees bending to take the impact. He rolled once, came up in a crouch, eyes scanning for threats. No words, just a nod, sharp as a blade. The second net was rigged tighter, with a higher anchor wedged between 2 boulders. Eleanor climbed, boots scraping for purchase on sun-baked stone. Her skirt snagged on thorns. She ripped it free. Halfway up, dizziness hit. 3 days of short rations and brutal heat. She paused, pressed her forehead to the cool rock, then kept going. From the top, she could see the warriors below, the first already slicing his companion's lesser bonds with a small blade he'd somehow kept hidden. Good. They weren't helpless. She reached the main anchor, a thick stake driven deep, looped with rawhide. One cut would drop him hard. She sawed through the rawhide instead, letting it fray until the warrior below signaled readiness. When it parted, he landed clean, shoulder taking the brunt, but nothing breaking. Both men stood now, rubbing wrists raw from ropes, retrieving hidden knives from boot tops. The dead horses yielded nothing. No water, no weapons left by the trappers. The warriors exchanged quick words in Comanche, too low for her to catch. Eleanor slid down the slope, knife still out. The branded one, Tahoma, met her eyes first. The other, leaner, with the hawk feather, Nalin, scanned the ridges for dust signs. Dusk bled into the sky when they moved out. No discussion, just motion. They took a game trail west into Broken Canyon country, single file, Eleanor in the middle. The warriors erased signs as they went, brushing prints with branches, stepping on rock where possible. Night dropped suddenly and cold. They found shelter in a narrow overhang, with no fire. Eleanor shared her last jerky. They divided it 3 ways without ceremony. Water from her canteen passed hand to hand, each taking only a swallow. Under thin starlight, pieces emerged. Tahoma and Nalin hadn't ridden together. Separate war parties, both hit by the same bounty crew in ambushes days apart, hung together to save the trappers' work. Practical cruelty. Dawn brought dust plumes on the horizon, riders splitting to search. The hunt closed fast. Eleanor studied the land, recognizing the tactics. She'd seen cattlemen use fire to drive stock into box canyons. Same principle. Burn the brush, force the quarry into dead-end terrain where rifles waited. She spoke first. They'll fire the grass east to push us into the narrows. Tahoma nodded, understanding her English. Then we split, she said. I'll leave clear tracks north. They'll follow a lone white woman before 2 warriors. Nalin's eyes narrowed. No doubt, calculation. A white widow was easier prey, less bounty, but less risk. Tahoma spoke low in Comanche, then to her, dangerous. So is staying together. Silence stretched. Then both men nodded. The decision settled like dust after a stampede. No heroics, just the cold math of survival. Eleanor veered north at the first fork, boots dragging deliberate tracks through soft sand, deep heel marks, broken sage stems, a strip of cloth torn from her skirt caught on thornbrush. Anything to sell the story of a desperate woman stumbling alone. Behind her, Tahoma and Nalin melted south into the canyons, moving fast and silent over stone. The plan was simple. Give the hunters easier prey to chase. Buy the warriors time to circle wide and regroup after dark. She pushed hard for 2 hours, heart hammering louder than her steps. Dust rose in a thin plume behind her, bait on the wind. By mid-afternoon, the first riders appeared on the ridge, 3 of them, cutting her sign like hounds on blood. She caught glimpses, wide brims, rifles across saddles, the glint of bounty badges. Eleanor angled toward a dry wash lined with supply caches the hunters used. She knew the spots from freight runs her husband made. Barrels of water buried under brush, sacks of grain, spare ammunition. If she could ruin one, the chase would slow. She reached the cache at dusk, lungs burning. 3 saddled horses tethered nearby, pack saddles heavy with gear. No guard in sight. The main party is still out burning grass lines. Perfect. Knife out. She worked fast. First, the water barrels. She pried lids and tipped them, watching precious liquid soak into thirsty ground. Next, the grain sacks, slashed open, feed spilling for coyotes. Saddles came last, cinches cut halfway through, so they'd snap under weight miles later. A tin of axle grease sat among the tools, thick and black. She smeared it across dry tinder and struck flint from a dead rider's pouch. Flame caught quickly, leaping to canvas packs and dry manzanita. Smoke boiled up black against the fading sky. Horses screamed, rearing against their ties. She sliced their leads and slapped flanks. They bolted east into open desert, dragging burning gear. Shouts erupted from the ridge. Riders wheeled back toward the fire, cursing loud enough to carry on the wind. Eleanor slipped into the shadows of the wash, circling west to the rendezvous point, a lone cottonwood scarred by lightning. She'd barely caught her breath when shots cracked behind her. 2 hunters had broken off early, pushing hard. Bullets whined off rock as she ran. Then movement ahead. Tahoma and Nalin bursting from cover, knives flashing. They hit the lead rider like wolves on a steer. One went down hard, rifle skidding. The second swung his mount, firing wildly. Nalin took the bullet high in the arm, spun, but kept his feet. He grabbed the fallen rifle in his good hand, while Tahoma dragged the dazed rider from the saddle. Hooves thundered as the second hunter fled back toward the fire. Blood-soaked Nalin's sleeve was dark, but he tied it off with rawhide without a sound. The captured horse, strong army remounts, now carried their gear. They mounted double, Eleanor behind Tahoma, and rode hard into deepening night. Fire glow painted the horizon behind them, shouts fading. The hunter's plan lay in ashes. Water gone, horses scattered, one man down. But the main bunch, led by Slade Carver himself, would regroup by dawn, angrier and more determined. They rode until the cottonwood stood black against stars. There they dismounted, checked Nalin's wound. Through flesh, no bone. Eleanor tore her spare petticoat for bandages, while Tahoma scouted ahead. The land narrowed into red rock mazes, canyons twisting like snake tracks. Somewhere in those walls lay a cave with one narrow mouth, defensible if they reached it first. By false dawn, they found it, a slit in the cliff, barely wide enough for a man sideways. Inside, cool darkness and a trickle of seeping water. They led the horse in as far as it would go, then blocked the entrance with dead brush. Outside, hoofbeats echoed, Slade Carver's voice carrying clear, promising slow deaths. Rifles cocked, smoke grenades rattled against rock, trapped, outnumbered. Wound bleeding is slow but steady. For the first time since leaving Harrow Creek, Eleanor felt the walls close in real. No more running room. No more tricks. And if this tale of quiet choices in a brutal land stirs something in you, the kind of raw courage most stories leave out, do me a favor and subscribe now. These forgotten frontier voices deserve to be heard, and your support keeps them alive. They waited in the dark, backs to stone, listening to boots scrape closer. Slade Carver's shadow fell across the narrow entrance first, then the man himself, big, bearded, silver concho hatband, catching the first pale light of dawn. He carried a torch in one hand, a Colt in the other, smoke grenades dangling from his belt like ripe fruit. "Price!" His voice bounced off the rock walls, thick with whiskey and hate. "I know you're in there with them. Send the Redskins out, and maybe I'll let you walk back to town. Hell, I'll even buy you a drink for the trouble." Eleanor pressed deeper into the cave's throat, back against cool stone. Tahoma crouched left of the opening, rifle scavenged from the night fight held steady. Nalin, arm bound tight, knelt right with the captured revolver. The horse shifted nervously at the rear, ears flat. No one answered Slade. He laughed, low and ugly. "Suit yourselves." The first grenade clattered in, hissing gray smoke that boiled across the floor. Eyes burned instantly. Coughs racked the air. Tahoma fired once, a spark off rock outside, deliberate miss to keep Slade cautious. Another grenade followed. Smoke thickened, choking. Visibility dropped to arm's length. The plan was clear. Drive them blinded into the open where his remaining men waited with rifles. Eleanor tasted iron, Fear or blood, hard to tell. She gripped the butcher knife tighter, blade already dark from old stains. Years in the slaughter yard taught her one thing. When cornered, the quiet cut often ended it faster than noise. Slade grew impatient. Boots scraped closer. Time's up. He stepped into the mouth, torch raised high to light targets, Colt leading. Smoke swirled around him like a bad omen. Tahoma shifted for a clear shot, but the torch flame would blind him the instant he fired. Nolan couldn't raise his wounded arm high enough for accuracy. Eleanor moved first. She came from the blind side, Slade's left, low and fast along the wall where shadow clung thickest. Knife reversed in her fist, point down like dressing a steer. Slade sensed her late. He swung the Colt, but the barrel caught on rock in the narrow space. Torch flared wild, painting the cave in jumping orange. The blade went in just below the ribs, angled up, one clean thrust, honed from 1,000 carcasses. Hot blood spilled over her hand instantly. Slade roared, more surprise than pain at first. He backhanded with the torch. Flames whooshed past her ear, singeing hair. She twisted the knife deeper, felt it grate on bone. He staggered, Colt barking once into the ceiling, stone chips raining. Torch dropped, rolling, hissing in a puddle of seep water. In the sudden half-dark, Slade clawed for her throat. Big hands closed, thumbs digging, breath cut off. Black spots bloomed. But Tahoma was already there, rifle butt crashing down on Slade's wrist, bones cracking like dry mesquite. Nolan kicked the Colt away as it fell. Slade sank to his knees outside the entrance, blood pumping dark between fingers clutching his side. Eyes found Eleanor's in the dying torchlight. Recognition, then something close to respect before glazing over. He toppled forward, face in red dust, silver conchos dulled by dawn. Silence rushed in behind him, broken only by harsh breathing and the horse's nervous snort. Outside, the remaining hunters, 2, maybe 3, milled uncertainly. Slade's death cracked their nerve. Hooves retreated fast, fading toward open country. Eleanor leaned against the wall, knife slipping from blood-slick fingers. Hands shook now that it was done. No triumph, just the heavy knowledge that another man breathed no more because of her blade. Tahoma checked the entrance. Clear. Nolan retrieved the Colt, sliding it into his belt. Dawn light crept stronger, painting the cave mouth pink. Smoke drifted lazily overhead. 3 survivors stood over the body of the man who'd hunted them across half of Texas. No cheers, no speeches. Just the quiet understanding that the chain had broken, one link at a time, ending here in blood and stone. They dragged Slade deeper into the brush for coyotes, erased signs as best they could with wounded haste. The horse carried Nolan now. Tahoma walked point. Eleanor brought rear. They left the cave behind, moving west toward distant blue haze, where rumor spoke of valleys still holding water and grass. The hunt was over, but the frontier never truly forgave. The sun cleared the eastern rims just as they crested the last ridge above the cave. Light struck the red rock like a hammer on an anvil, turning dust motes into sparks. Below, Slade Carver's body lay half hidden in brush, silver conchos scattered dull in the dirt. Eleanor paused only long enough to confirm no riders crested the skyline. The remaining hunters had vanished in the night, choosing distance over vengeance. Tahoma led the captured horse down a switchback trail into higher country. Juniper and pinon thickened, air cooling with altitude. Nolan rode, wounded arm slung, while Eleanor walked beside, boots finding rhythm despite bone-deep fatigue. Water became the immediate threat. The canteen has been dry since midnight. Mid-morning delivered a tanaja in a shaded overhang. Rainwater pooled clear. They drank slowly, letting it soak cracked lips. Tahoma scouted ahead, Returned with word of a spring 2 miles on, grass around it, old camps but no fresh sign. They pushed for it. Cottonwoods shaded the trickle when they arrived. Green felt almost unnatural after endless burn. Nolin dismounted pale. Eleanor reboiled spring water, changed his bandage with stripped cloth, wound clean, muscle torn, no infection yet. Tahoma stripped useful gear from the saddle. Henry rifle, cartridges, bedroll. Practical take, nothing more. The afternoon brought quiet. Canyon wrens called. Eleanor sat against bark, knife ready, watching light shift. Silence carried no menace for the first time in weeks. Nolin slept. Tahoma sharpened the rifle, then cleaned Eleanor's butcher knife and handed it back. He pointed west. Valleys there, water always, grass high. She understood. Direction offered, not charity. Dusk saw them moving again. Horse packed, heavy canteens, found jerky, counted ammunition. Nolin rode, Tahoma scouted point. Eleanor guarded rear. Night camp dry on a bench, stars sharp overhead. Talk came low. Tahoma spoke of lost raids, scattered kin. Nolin added empty buffalo grounds. Eleanor gave the freight secrets, her husband's death, and the town's silence. Facts traded clean. No pity. The second dawn opened a divide. Below lay rumpled tableland, hiding canyons and green pockets. Distant mountains rose snow-capped. They descended over days, guided by water, and grazed. Deer appeared, rabbits fat. Meat roasted over small fires at last. Wounds mended. Strength returned. The horse filled out. One creekside evening, Tahoma drew a dirt map. Agency posts marked for avoidance, safe valleys deeper west. Here, he tapped. No bounty comes. Eleanor studied the lines against the horizon and nodded once. Months on, plains travelers whispered of a white woman riding with 2 Comanche, heading into unmapped folds. Most dismissed it as wind talk. But in those hidden valleys, clear streams, tall grass, 3 lives persisted under open sky. No markers, no tales sung. Just survival, claimed mile by mile, choice by choice, in a land that forgave nothing but rewarded the stubborn. The wind kept scouring old tracks to dust, as it always did. The red dust of the Texas frontier has settled, and 3 lives, once hunted separately, now walk the same hidden trail toward distant valleys. Eleanor Price, the exiled widow who chose a quiet knife over silent death, found that survival sometimes means cutting the ropes that bind others, even when it ties you to their fate. What do you think? Was her decision to free those warriors reckless, or the only honorable choice left in a lawless land? Did true justice ever exist out there, or just moments when the chain of cruelty broke for a few? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice helps keep these forgotten stories alive. Thank you for riding this trail with me today. If this tale of raw courage moved you, subscribe now. We've got more Untold Frontiers waiting, until the next dust trail rises. See you soon.